Hello fellow pilots. This is a bit of a departure from my usual video style, but I thought I'd try something different. The grind in War Thunder is no easy task, so most people who value their sanity end up purchasing premium time, vehicles, or both. I never really had any sanity though, and I must have missed the memo because I've somehow managed to grind to top tier without premium time or high tier premiums. It definitely took a lot longer than it could have, but for those of you who are just as insane as me, I'm hoping I can share a few tips on how I approached my RP grind to get to the top tiers in several nations, and some of the things I did to make the process faster and more fun. This isn't supposed to be a full and comprehensive guide to grinding, as there are already many other people who have already done videos on that. Instead, I'll be talking about the specific things that I found helpful as a free-to-play player in my time going through the vehicles in War Thunder. Before we begin, I'd like to note that when grinding a new tech tree, my main goal wasn't just trying to get to the top. I personally was more interested in playing different and unique vehicles, with the vehicles at the top being on that list of unique and interesting vehicles, which is why I haven't really played that many copy-paste nations like China, Israel, and Germany at high tiers. So with that being said, let's get started. The first tip I have is to participate in the events and the battle passes. I can only really recommend participating in events if you already play the game a lot and are willing to put in the effort to grind out them, but it's a great way to earn vehicles and premium currency for free. Doing events can earn you vehicles which you can keep, or you can sell them on the marketplace for Gaijin coin, which then can be used like real money to purchase premium time, vehicles, GE, and more. I've mainly done this to buy rare event vehicles that I had missed out on, but you can do with your Gaijin coin whatever you'd like. Leveling the battle pass is a lot less intensive, but it will take a while. But the number of vehicles I've earned through the battle pass and the war bond shop and the value that I've gotten out of them is pretty insane, even though you can only really get one from each if you don't pay money. Some of my most played vehicles are war bond vehicles, and if anything, they were the ones that got me through most of the prop grind. And even though most of them are rank 3 and below, I still think it's very much worth it since I personally dislike playing rank 1 and rank 2 planes because of the slow matchmaking, poor plane performance, below average player skill level, and the relatively uninteresting gameplay. Highly recommend if you have the time to play somewhat regularly and can complete the tasks. My second tip is to take advantage of the inline research boost and spading bonuses. Researching a vehicle by playing the one right before it gives you a plus 10% research bonus. I'd also noticed that with the bonus RP that you get from spading a vehicle on top of that 10% boost, I would usually be able to unlock the next vehicle simply by spading the one I was already playing with no extra research necessary, letting me move straight on to the next one. This fit in very well with my goal of experiencing unique vehicles, as it let me simply grind straight down each line and play each vehicle along the way, since I was planning on spading each one of them anyways. This is why most of the subsonic jets I've played in these nations are spaded. One additional benefit to researching down one line is that in certain circumstances it can let you negate the rank difference penalty. Normally, researching a vehicle 2 ranks higher than the one that you're playing will nerf your rewards by 60%, but if they're connected with a line, this 60% reduction isn't applied and you even get the 10% boost on top of that. This is how I was able to research the F-16 AJ using just the Mitsubishi F1, which I liked playing a lot more than the F4 EJ Phantom. Now this next tip will sound a little silly, but I do mean this genuinely. Let me explain. It is a lot more important to get better at the core gameplay before trying to get to higher tier jets. The higher you go, the less consistent the game is, and the more weapon systems you'll have to mess around with, so having a poor base skill level at the game will only frustrate you in the long term. Get comfortable with mid-tier props, especially around the battle rating of 4.0, in situational awareness, game sense, leading aim, dogfighting, and defensive flying. I'd personally recommend trying to get comfortable with rank 3 vehicles in at least 3 nations before moving on to higher tier games, because playing a variety of different nations is the best way to learn the weaknesses and strengths of each vehicle and how to counter them when you face them. I recommend around BR 4.0 because the matchmaker and the enemies you will encounter will be fairly consistent, and there will be plenty of opportunities to dogfight against reasonably skilled but not too difficult enemies. Obviously, getting good isn't a straightforward process and will take time. I played Air Arcade for a really long time, and while it's a fun game mode, it did not prepare me well for Air Realistic, and I had a lot of trouble figuring out how to perform well. I did eventually get better, but that was with a bit of help, which brings me to my next tip. It can be tough to learn the advantages and disadvantages of certain vehicles just by looking at them, especially since the vehicle stat cards can be very unhelpful and misleading. That's why before deciding whether to research or play a vehicle, the easiest way to learn if it's worth your time or not is to watch an informational content creator's video covering it and see what their opinion is of it. Personally, I highly recommend Defin and Adam the Engineer's videos. Their videos are great for learning the pros and cons of a plane, their playstyle, and they'll also be straightforward in telling you if a vehicle is bad or not. Their videos are honestly my own go-tos when I'm new to a vehicle, and Adam's technical videos in particular are great for learning how to use the less apparent aerodynamic characteristics of an aircraft to approach air combat better. I've personally been trying to showcase vehicles that haven't gotten much exposure to fill in the gaps that might exist in their coverage, and I'm also planning on making a series on how to improve at dogfighting in AirRB, so make sure to tune in if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Even with experience in props, the game and the grind will still get increasingly challenging the higher up you go. Planes fly faster and are harder to hit, you get third-partied more often, battle rating compression gets worse, basic modifications like G-Suit and missiles become much more essential and take much longer to unlock. It's an uphill battle. Definitely, if it's the first time you're experiencing a certain battle rating bracket in your new and completely stock plane, learning the meta can be challenging and difficult. That's why it's actually not a bad idea to go for AI targets. There's a bit of a stigma against base bombing and farming bots, as people think you're being unhelpful to the team. But the way I see it, killing ground targets will speed up the stock grind so that you can bring your plane into a more usable state much faster. Killing ground targets in AI planes will also bleed tickets, which increase the chance of your team winning, so you're not being completely useless. Right now my Yak 141 is mostly stock, and I don't really feel like trying to dogfight top tiers in a transonic jet with just 2 R60Ms, so I'll be bombing until at least I get better missiles. And if you look at the stats on my subsonic Swedish jets, you'll find that the number of ground targets destroyed is, well, let's say it's a bit more than 0. There are also some planes which really don't have much air-to-air capacity, and can't really do anything consistently besides ground pounding, so not much to say there. Also, the rewards you get at the end of each game are scaled up by how long you've spent in battle, so if you think you will eventually be able to perform some useful actions in-game, try to stay alive and not be too reckless. Obviously, don't be overly passive or camp airfields or anything annoying like that, and know when to take an L when it's clear that you won't be able to do anything else as the last person being chased on your team. It's much more efficient at that point to J out and return to the hangar, or let the enemy get a kill so that you can jump into the next match and get back to earning and having fun, than being chased around for another 10 minutes. This last tip is the one that I personally think is the most important to keep in mind. It runs a bit in contrary to tip number 2, but if you don't enjoy a vehicle after giving it a chance, don't force yourself to play it. I found myself getting rather burnt out trying to unlock and spade some of the French jets because I was in the mindset of trying to make as much RP from the inline bonus as I could. At a certain point I realized it wasn't really working for me, so I switched over to a different jet that I had already spaded and wasn't in the same line but I found more enjoyable. Most ranks for most tech trees have at least one good vehicle, so if the rest are bad, you can skip the others and just focus on playing the one that you like. Take some breaks after spading stock vehicles and play some spaded ones that you enjoy. Play some low-tier props for fun, even if it isn't efficient. If you play for research efficiency at the cost of enjoyment, you will get burnt out, so pace yourself out and stop to smell the roses along the way. Also, if you have a premium plane that you enjoy playing but it's low tier, it's not a bad idea to use it for grinding higher tiers, even with the rank difference penalty. Researching 2 ranks above you only loses you 60% RP, which usually can be negated by the premium vehicle bonus and your performance. I also know a guy who researched their F4 EJ Kai using their A6M5, which is a rank difference of 4 ranks. And while I'm not quite that insane, I can't fault him for it since it did work out for him in the end. Well, that's all I have for you today. Hopefully you got something out of this video. If you have any tips or tricks you'd like to share, I'd much appreciate it if you left a comment about it, cause I still have all of this, and this to grind out. Anyways, I've got another 4 F16s that aren't gonna grind themselves, so I'll see y'all later. Oh, and make sure